A young boy named George works on a radio with his three friends. Later, the boys go to the movies. The next day, they play in the woods and try to capture a snake. That night, George returns to fixing his radio. The following day, the boys talk about a monster that lives on an island. One of them says his sister told him the monster is huge, has claws, and can tear through anything. That is why no one goes to the island. The creature supposedly came from underground, from the loop, and murdered people long ago. George wonders why no one ever killed it. Another boy suggests they visit the island and find out the truth for themselves. George is scared because his father warned him never to go there, but the other boys pressure him until he agrees. They take a boat to the island. When they arrive, they find an old canoe and wonder if that is how the monster got there. The other boys encourage George to go deeper into the woods while they stay behind. As he explores, George hears their boat and rushes back, only to see the two boys leaving without him. George is stranded, and one of the boys cruelly shouts for him to say hi to the monster. George sits on the old canoe and removes his wet shoes. He notices electronic parts scattered along the shore, picks up a few pieces, and starts building a radio so he can contact his parents. Strange noises begin coming from the woods. Suddenly, a snake bites him on the arm. George ties his sock around the wound, then ventures into the forest where he finds a trap designed to alert someone to movement. Nearby, there are claw marks on the trees. Deeper in the woods, George finds more traps made from branches and stones. Day turns to night and George realizes he is lost. His arm wound is getting infected and rain begins to fall. He takes shelter under a fallen tree. The next day, he crawls out and sees that his arm is badly infected and crawling with ants. He hears strange noises and takes out his pocket knife. Soon, he finds a fire and a tent. When a strange figure approaches, George runs and gets caught in one of the traps. He cuts the rope around his feet and waits for the monster to leave. Once it is gone, George runs away and hides underneath the fallen tree. A rescue team arrives on the island, calling his name. George comes out, but the monster suddenly appears and scares him. He uses his taser on it, but the creature is unaffected. George runs until he reaches the shore, but he is too late. The rescue team is already leaving. He shouts after them, and luckily the boat turns back. At the hospital, his mother comes to take him home. George survives, but his arm has to be amputated. Sometime later, George is working on his radio again. His friends arrive, but he does not want to speak to them. At dinner, George talks with his father, who asks whether he saw anything on the island and whether he told anyone. George says he did not. His father tells him he never should have gone there, but now that he has seen what he saw, he must never tell anyone. George promises to keep the secret. Later, he begins training with an electronic metal prosthetic arm. At school, a girl teases George and asks if he is a robot. Years pass and George is now an adult. He is married with children, but he still seems haunted by what happened to him as a child. His wife tells him he was talking in his sleep again and sounded upset, but George does not remember what he said. She suggests keeping a pad nearby so she can write it down next time. Later, George finds his son Cole playing with the same taser he used on the island. George quickly takes it away and tells him it is not a toy. Cole asks what it is for, but George avoids answering. He puts the taser in his cupboard and notices that his prosthetic arm is malfunctioning. He takes it to be repaired. The repair woman says it is an old model and offers him newer, more advanced options, but George refuses. The old arm belongs to him and carries personal meaning. Later, while getting a haircut, George sees a young girl staring at his metal arm. He gently tells her there is nothing to be afraid of. It is just different. While watching a movie, George has flashbacks to his time on the island. Later, he talks to his wife about what happened there and admits he never told his sons the truth. She suggests telling them it was a snake bite that became infected so it does not remain a mystery. George agrees. That night, unable to sleep, he works on the old radio again and hears screeching noises. The next day, he visits his mother and asks whether his father ever talked about the island. His mother tells him the truth. The thing on the island was not a monster in the way people imagined. George's father created it. It was alive in its own way, the first of its kind, but it was too different, and people would not accept it. George realizes his father did not leave the creature on the island because it was dangerous. His mother explains that his father sent it there to protect it. He was not trying to protect people from the creature. He was trying to protect the creature from people. George returns to the island and retraces his steps to find the creature. He finds the trap, the claw marks on the trees, and the fallen tree where he once hid. He finds the fire and the tent, and finally comes face to face with the creature, which is actually a sentient android. George tells it that his father made it, put it on a boat, and hid it on the island to keep it safe. The robot appears to be missing an arm. George apologizes for hurting it when he was young. Then he removes his prosthetic arm and gives it to the robot. The episode ends with George showing compassion toward the thing he feared for most of his life. He spent years seeing the creature as the source of his trauma, but eventually learns that it was also a victim. Like and subscribe the channel for more videos like these.